really sorry. We've been muted this whole time, and I think people have been trying to tell me. Are we all good now? I'm going to bring the guys in.
Hi.
I'm bringing you in because no one heard anything I just said, did they?
We were like messaging you like, are we supposed to hear you? We're not sure.
Yes, you are. So guys, that is probably one of the most tragic beginnings to anything.
I bet it was the best beginning you've ever done in your whole life.
Oh my God. If anybody from RADA, okay, is listening, okay, I'm getting in. I'm getting into RADA. I'm going to be an actor. So if anybody was just watching that and laughing your socks off, you know, this is what I do for a living. I normally sit behind the screen and make sure everybody can hear me and sorry, hear the presenters like these two guys, Annelies and Matt. Say hello to those guys. This is not the introduction I wanted to give them. But guys, what I was just telling everybody was what today was all about. I was just talking about, we've been talking a lot about being hot, open, honest, open, and trustworthy. And I gave this really good, yeah, it is hot today. You can't open the windows, it'd just be too noisy. But then I just saying that if you tell people you're honest and open and trustworthy, it's too easy to get picked apart because you're never going to tell anybody you're not those things. So that's the first problem with telling people you're hot. And then the other problem is that imagine that if you work for a company and then you walked into that company and in the reception it just says integrity, and you go, oh brilliant, and then you find out they've all just been done for money laundering, and then you go, well actually it's just really all falling apart. So we just got to talk about your brand much better. So I'm just going to call up those notes that I've just been talking about a second ago. We're going to today cover brand relevance, keeping your customers engaged, especially in this time. We're going to be talking about how vulnerability, how about explaining to your customers that you're vulnerable right now can draw people towards you rather than pushing them away. And of course, we've got this really amazing connection toolkit. So throughout the session, you're going to be dropping in little actionable stuff that people can do and actually take away. So I can now see that loads of messages are coming through, and I'm getting messages to say we can't hear you, which is awesome. So if everybody has forgiven me and we haven't lost anybody,
I've not forgiven you, Steve.
We've actually gained someone. We've gained someone since you couldn't talk. So maybe we should keep it up.
I tell you what, I am going to leave and let you guys introduce yourselves, okay, and then start off with talking about yourselves, introduce yourselves, and then let's start talking about brand relevance.
No, Steve, I have actually forgiven you. So
yeah, me too.
He's still there, everybody. Don't worry. He's just behind the scenes now. Annelies, would you like to go first? Should we do the whole traditional, ladies first thing? Why not? Okay. Go for it.
Thanks, darling. So hi everyone. I'm Annelies James, and I'd say I do a few things. I like to mix it up, but mainly I help people to define themselves, to be noticed, and to create opportunities for themselves by using personal branding, but also by using video. So I do both of those things. I've got a real passion for human, for being vulnerable, for showing who you really are and taking ownership of your life and your business. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm about, just all that nice, mushy, human-y stuff.
Awesome. I love the mushy human-y stuff. The technical term there. We're going to use a lot of technical terms like that, I imagine, during the course of the next hour. So anyway, I'm Matt Davies. I'm a brand strategy and culture consultant, and in essence, I do a very similar thing to Annelies, but probably more on a company-wide business basis. So what I do is I help align leadership teams, give them a kind of a North Star, an understanding of why they exist and who they exist to serve, their brand, and in essence get them to all pull in the same direction towards that goal. I'm all about customer centricity, making sure that the customer is first, or the tribe, as sometimes you might hear me talk about, the tribe first. And so it's all about basically creating experiences, creating connection with people on a human level. And that's where I think where Annelies and I, we really see eye to eye on those things, although I'm sure we've got slightly different takes because of our different backgrounds in regard to that. I'm a solo consultant, and I do a lot of talking, so you'll find I'll probably talk way too much during the next hour as well. But I know, Annelies, you can give me a run for my money, right?
Let's give it a go.
Steve said before we came on, he was like, I'm not sure the internet's ready for this much energy. So so this is exciting. Yeah, very exciting.
Right,
so thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much.
You are so right. And I'm going to keep you guys on track all the time. But so what I'd like us to talk about first of all is the very first point that we're trying to make, which is brand relevance, to keep our customers engaged. So what does brand relevance mean to you guys?
Shall I tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brand relevance. Oh, you going first,
No, you go. You go.
Well, from a human point of view and from a personal branding point of view, I think relevance is about kind of sticking true to our condition and our current conditions, and to make sure that we're communicating in an empathic and trustworthy way. You know, at the moment is a really interesting situation because we're all triggered and we're all suffering through at different stages this pandemic. Everybody's feeling in weirdly similar ways and in different phases, you'll see. So relevance is about operating right now and communicating right now to people so that they actually in the moment can actually respond to your brand in an effective way. And actually right now is the first time this has probably happened, like, you know, back when other big large tragedies happened in the world, you know, we probably didn't have so much capacity to communicate digitally. So relevance for me is about keeping it human and responding to things that are going on day to day that affect buying decisions as well. Matt, what would you say?
Brilliant. Well, I think you're right. I think relevance is always key to branding. Before I kind of talk about relevance, do you mind if I just define brand? Because I find that sometimes is really helpful. Because often people, I don't know if you get this, Annelies, but I get this a lot. Like people think of a brand like it's a logo and a set of fonts, and I know you and I have a different understanding of that. I define branding as the meaning that people attach to you and your offer. So that could be to your company, to your products, to your services. It's kind of that gut feeling. It's kind of like that instinct that people have when they come across any of your touch points. And so for me, with that meaning, the meaning people attach to you, that kind of widens our thinking a little bit, because it's not just about a logo and some fonts. That might, you know, be part of it, but it certainly isn't the core of it, right? So for me, brands you know, it's really crucial that businesses and brands, they think about themselves in that context. Like that meaning is owned in the hearts and the minds of the beholders that come across them, that experience them. It's in the hearts and minds of the customer. And so when we talk about brand relevance, that's where I'm coming from on this. Like if somebody thinks you're relevant to them right now, you're in a great place. If you've become irrelevant to them, to your customer base, to your tribe, then I think you've got some work to do. You know, if you've all been furloughed, in essence, and you've not been helping your tribe, in essence, you're irrelevant right now. So as you begin to come out of furlough, or as you begin as we begin to kind of get used to this new normal, relevance is going to be crucial. So that's why I think it's great that Steve's put this event on and for us to talk about this in that sense. To be relevant is to be meaningful to your audience at this moment of time. What do you think about that, Annelies? How do you define brand? Do you have a similar definition?
Well, it's interesting. For me, personal branding is about leveraging your personality and your values and showcasing your human element to create meaning for other people. But something that you said really triggered me, because I went to an event recently, ages ago now, and I said to this guy was chatting away, and he said to me, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, personal branding." He's like, "Oh, what, like t-shirts and stuff?" And I was like, no. But before I even had the chance to speak, he then just continued talking at me, and I was just like, okay, fine, whatever. But I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things for me to do with relevance is actually around purpose, because we actually all have a brand, either individually or as a company. People think and feel things about us all the time. And it's basically about how purposeful we want their thought to be and how we negotiate with them to transform their opinion. This is why, you know, companies spend billions of pounds building brands and also rebuilding brands once some massive PR issue happens, because it's about, you know, you sow the seeds of thought and feeling with people, but you have to navigate the way for people and help them along, and that's when fonts and colors and things like that come in, but it's absolutely not the whole thing. That's just a very small part of it, really.
Yeah, for sure, I would agree that, and in essence I would suggest to you it's a tiny part, because for me, I mean, it's a part, don't get me wrong, and it's a very important part, but it is the kind of the icing on the cake, the veneer, the lick of paint at the end, where brands, and this is where kind of I think you play a lot in the personal branding space, and so that's kind of good, because you know the strategic element, the purpose element that you touched on, the values, which are crucial to kind of get right, it's a lot easier to do on your own, because you only have to make those decisions as an individual, and then you need to be aware of them and conscious of them, and then act on them. Where I play with a lot of my clients, it's interesting, because the problem that a lot of businesses struggle with is alignment. And for me, I think the brands that I'm seeing doing very, very well at the moment appear to have great leadership alignment, great purpose. They understand the two big questions: why they exist beyond making money, and who they exist to serve. And those two questions, once you've got the answer to them, they really help you become and remain relevant. One of the things I was going to say, though, was really around, you know, this idea of being hot, right? Which we're talking about. Which I love this kind of expression that we've collectively coined. Although I think, to be fair to Steve, give him the nod, give him the credit where he's due. I think he coined it first, so that's where the credit should lie. But you know, being honest, open, and building trust. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about trust. How does a brand build trust is the question. Well, by being honest and open. But what do we mean by that? I'm sure we're going to pick that apart as we go through this conversation. But for me, very much, it's around building those experiences that at every touch point deliver on what the customer expects, or over delivers on what they expect. And that can only come from uniting and aligning your firstly your leadership team, and then cascading that down through your organization, so that everybody is working towards creating a customer experience, or a series of customer experiences which build trust. So that's exactly kind of how I see it. It's about those experiences. And one thing I would just say is that I've been thinking about quite a lot recently is, I don't know, Annelies, are you familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I don't know if you've come across that,
yes.
But I don't know if anybody else on the
self-actualization.
You got it. So there's if you've not come across this at the moment, it's probably worth just talking about it very briefly. But basically, there's different tiers to this hierarchy of needs, and it kind of starts off with what he calls physiological, which is kind of like your physical needs, like your safety, you can sleep, you're warm, that kind of stuff. And then it moves up into safety, more security. So
that's
it's
more like
around
financial security and things.
The law, that kind of stuff. But then it goes into belongingness and being part of a community, and then it's self-esteem, and then self-actualization within that. Now, the reason I mention that is because if we put this in the context of our customers, of the people perceiving us as brands, be that as an individual or be that as a business, what it means is that if we're used to playing at the top of the hierarchy of needs, like self-actualization, like very much around lifestyle and, you know, all the fancy things, which I think a lot of people and a lot of brands I've worked with definitely do operate, and at least traditionally have operated there. The problem is people's brains are not there at the moment. We've gone right, like the customer has crashed right down to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're worrying about toilet roll, or at least we were. We're worrying about our family and safety and how safe we feel right now. And I think, therefore, with that in mind, if we're used to communicating and creating experiences at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need to rethink those experiences. We've got to rethink the customer experience, and how we help our tribe. So that's what I'm going to be preaching today. What do you think about that?
So something you kind of mentioned that kind of makes me think a little bit more. So as soon as the pandemic happened, you're right. So everybody comes right down on that. They're worried about their safety, they're worried about their security, they're worried about finances. You just can't operate at that state of flow and that state of self-actualization and just that energy that you have. But also, I don't know if you noticed, but there was loads of shaming online about, and there was this whole debate about whether to charge for services or whether not to charge. And that, because everybody was triggered and everybody was like stressed out and thinking, well, actually I want to give now, but then other people were like, well, I can't give because I need to feed my kids, and it became this real feeding frenzy. And for me, I stepped back personally. I was communicating little positive things that were slightly distracting from the day-to-day to allow people to feel motivated and happy, but I wasn't actually having much of an opinion until I was actually in a place where I felt capable to speak to my consumers in a way that was authentically positive. And I was like, actually, I now feel okay to lead the way here, because it is essentially what you're talking about, is being really authentic in your brand. And
sure.
We're not all great, we actually are vulnerable, and talking about that and being authentic actually builds trust, because if you're really honest about how you are, how you're coping, how your business is operating right now, if you bring people on that journey with you, they will trust you because they'll recognize that you are similar and you're equally challenged. And I did a post about basically that you should just say anything online right now, just as a brand, as an individual, just put something out there, communicate something, because it's the brands who've gone totally silent, like you said, who sort of have abandoned their tribe. These brands you looked up to, or these people you looked up to, and you thought, oh, they're here for me, they support me, they give me great customer experience, and then they were just gone overnight. And then that is just a huge, that breaks trust basically, and then you have to restart the journey again with them, which is tricky.
That's really cool. I want to jump in here, because I know we're just about, I can sense it, we're just about to move into vulnerability, and that's cool. But we have got a question which I'm going to drop onto you guys in a minute from Hannah. But you are right about communicate with something, but then obviously align yourself with people as you're going on. So I recently spoke to a gentleman called Justin Harlan, who owns, he's the CEO of CAE Technologies. And what was great about these guys, what's great for them, is working from home and providing services for that is what they do. So when they had to go from one off, or well, 3 or 4 offices, I think it was 11 offices to 300 offices effectively, because everyone just went and worked from home, they did it in less than 24 hours because it's what they do for a living. So what they did, which I thought was spectacular, was to show that they cared. They contacted every one of their customers with a personal call saying, this is what we do, and so it's easy for us and we get it. We know it's not easy for you. How can I help? Didn't try and upsell them, didn't try and deliver a new product to market that was really relevant at that moment. They understood their customer base. So I think that's one of the things that you were saying about aligning yourself with your customer. But Hannah's asking, how can you get people to tell you honestly how they see your brand, so that you know what to change?
I've got some feedback on this, because I do, part of what I do with personal branding is about 360 reviews. And I think we need to move away from features of our brands. So we need to think more about the benefits and how we actually, the mushy stuff, how we affect people psychologically and subconsciously. And it's all about how you ask the question. So I would recommend that your questions be emotionally charged. How does my brand make you feel? If you had a problem, why would you call me? Making it more tangible and feeling, rather than, oh, when did you use my service? How did you find my service? It's cold and it's sharp, and people will only give you those answers back. And the second thing I'd say is to get on the phone and say, look, critical friend needed. Just really want some honest feedback, warts and all. I need to be better at business. I need to engage you with my brand more, my product, services, and just emotionally load it and have that conversation on the phone. Because Rita will be really open to having a good old chinwag on the phone, but if you email her, she's probably like, oh, mañana. So that's what I'd say.
So that's, I think that's a fantastic question from Hannah. It is a tricky one. I would say, and I'm going to also sort of jump on this idea of contacting your customers yourselves. So I run a program called Brand Pivot, which I've done with some of my clients, and it's kind of like a 1-week sprint. In fact, it's free online. I'll drop a line or get you to drop it, Steve, later. But one of the first steps it's like a 5 or 6 step process, but one of the first steps in that, I recommend that you pull together your kind of your team that you're going to task with remaining relevant, right? And the first thing that you should get everybody to do, a multidiscipline team empowered, is to get them to look at your customer list. And there's usually an 80-20 rule with most businesses, which is that usually organically almost 20% of your customers will generate 80% of your revenue, typically, right? Probably some variant in that, but that's generally how it works. So if you could find your top 20% of customers, you know, and even if you're a B2B brand, for example, just have a look down the list, divvy them out amongst your team, and get them to contact them. Like literally pick up the phone or email and say, I'm Larry. I'm involved in innovation here at ABC Company. We're looking at how relevant we are right now. We appreciate that things have changed. We're really keen to continue to serve you. We are thinking of a few ideas and maybe drop a few suggestions in, like you know, we're thinking of doing this. I'm really interested in your feedback. Will this even have any impact on you whatsoever? Does it even matter? But the key thing is that we want to help you. So how can we help you? How can we, you know, still be relevant to you? Have you got any ideas for us? Now go out to the customer, hear what they have to say. And when you're speaking to them, I agree with Annelies, talk about how they're feeling right now. Talk about their pain. Talk about what they need. And then from there, gather that information, ask if you can phone them back in a few weeks' time, because you'll take that information and you can then come back together as a team and try and identify some of the key problems that your tribe is having right now. So then you can be really relevant by innovating and then calling them back and saying, hey, we're thinking of doing this. What are your thoughts? Anyway, that's kind of the start of a wider process. But the fact is that most businesses, if they're in an okay place, you know, you've when I say most, I think a lot of businesses have looked at this from a perspective of, can we gain market share right now? Like, how can we create new things and make more money? That's been one part of my experience, and that's really the wrong way to go. And the other part is to be completely shut down and just be like, right, we'll furlough and we'll be irrelevant, and we'll stick our heads down and hope for the best, and then emerge out of hibernation in a few months. I would say that both of those approaches we could do better than that, right, guys? We could do better. We could really think strategically about how we can remain relevant when people's worlds have sunk to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's my suggestion. The only way we're going to find out is if you pick up the phone and speak to them. Of course, there's other things. There's, like, you know, surveys and whatever else you might want to do. But for me, the phone, even if you're B2B, find that customer, find the relevant person in the business, give them a call. It's the best way, or approach them. What do you think, Annelies?
I spoke to a guy called Jamie Stenhouse, who's from Australia, on my podcast. And he's like built and sold loads of companies, like really successful, and he's all around automation. But he said to me he spends 90% of his time on the phone, and it only takes a few phone calls before he realizes that every single person he's talking to, it's all patterns. Everybody's doing and feeling and thinking the exact same thing. And he says he just lets his clients guide his business, because they all want the same thing. So then he just builds a product or builds a solution, and then suddenly he's got this target market. The only thing I'd add to what you said is that make sure that you call those people who did buy but never bought again and didn't engage with your brand, and find out if it was just a personality thing, or if it just your values didn't align, or they were just like, nah, and find out what you could do. Because we obviously don't want to, you know, service every single person in the world. It's impossible that our brand would align with that many people, but it's important to get that really critical feedback. I love negative feedback. I want it more than I want positive, because I think, how can I improve? And again, you like, how is this rubbish? Tell me. Tell me how this is rubbish and I can make it better.
Well, I think it's interesting, because I think if I can get really philosophical, right? I think in the Industrial Revolution, right? Let's go back to there for 1 second. What businesses used to do was they'd have a factory, right? And then they'd produce something like a bedpan or something. They'd be like, look, we can produce stuff. Let's just produce something. Here's a bedpan. We think it might be useful. We've got this bedpan. And then they'd run around. Do you want to buy my bedpan? Do you want to buy my product? Buy my product, please. And then people were like, yes or no, right? And all the power was in the hands of the business. They knew all the technical information. They knew why it was useful. And so they had to interrupt society and shake people and say, look how great this is. Now, obviously that was great in the Industrial Revolution, but now we have technology, and that's not how consumers consume anymore. Now we like to shop, but we don't like to be sold to. Like, we like to do our research before we get into touch with you. So what we're witnessing is the shift into the kind of the information era, or some people call it the robotic era, where the robots are kind of producing loads of stuff. What we're trying to do is make things more human, because the humans are like, do I even need this stuff? So what, you've produced this product, but I'd like to make my own choices. I'd like to screen out all the noise, and I'd like to have a nice life. Thank you very much. So the new way, in the new world, what we do is exactly what you said, Annelies, which is to shift from creating products to what I call designing customers. So this goes back to our tribe idea. So you know and get to know and understand your tribe intimately. You then solve their problem by producing not just a product that you shift off to them, but there's a whole service usually behind a lot of products. There's customer service, there's complaints, but there's usually software bolted in somewhere. Even if you buy something online, a product, usually you sign up for the warranty, and maybe there's a portal where you can download information and stuff like that. So that it isn't just the product anymore, it's the whole experience. Now, at that stage, once we know that's how people are buying, they're buying because they see some relevance in what you're doing and what you stand for. And I start to trust you because I'm seeing all of your marketing. I'm looking at your website. I'm looking at the experiences you're creating for other people, the stories that they're telling. Now I'm starting to buy into your brand. And now over time, I become ready to join you. But now everything's changed. So if we take it back down to the situation that we're in right now with the COVID scenario, that obviously there's huge shifts in the hospitality sector, in retail. This is a nightmare. Obviously, it's an absolute crisis of what we're going to do. Now, as those things are permitted to open up again, I'm going to ask this question to you. Like, how do you see those things sort of? How do you see those brands remaining relevant to a consumer base who are feeling very unsafe at the moment and very kind of insecure? Like, do you think that things will go back to normal, or do you think that there's going to be changes are going to have to come?
So in my research around personal branding, but actually generally in branding as well, 95% of buying decisions are subconscious. And actually way before we click a button or our brain says, oh, I need some socks and I trust Adidas, our brain, our subconscious has been making decisions and guiding our behaviors. And then it's just the shift change into the conscious. And then we're like, oh, and the brain takes all the glory, like, oh, I just made this decision last minute, but you didn't. You literally made it emotionally 10 months ago. And apparently we'll do a 7-hour deep dive. We'll actually spend over 7 hours actually before we even start to trust a company. So in terms of your question, trust is probably already established. So a good example, I love Wildwood. It's a restaurant and I love it. I don't know why, I'm just obsessed. And they've got a great vegan menu, which is excellent too.
Do they do pizzas? Do they do pizzas, Annelies?
Yeah, they're doing a wild mushroom pizza. It's delicious.
Oh my days. Goat's cheese.
Truffle mushroom pizza. You need to get down there. But anyway,
I'm a fan as well. Go on, carry on.
Also, 90% of people will trust someone who recommends a brand. So, boom, there you go. Wildwood customer.
2 recommendations there. There you go.
But Wildwood have messaged me since this lockdown, and they said, "Hi, we're struggling at the moment, but we want to know what we could do to make you feel comfortable to come to our restaurant." Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, do you know what? That is a really good way of asking me. So ask me how I'd feel comfortable. And it was like, would you like to sit next to people? Would you like to sit away? Would you like our staff to wear masks? Blah, 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 all these different things. And I thought, it's a really clever way to engage me. And I'm like, I can't wait now to go back because they also gave me a £5 voucher. So I was like, sweet. So for me, trust was already there. The food's always good. The experience is always great. The trust is already there. And the fact that they've communicated with me during this has just reinforced that trust. And now I'm like, yeah, as soon as they're open, I'm down there.
Okay, guys, this is really good, and I know that we've got to move on a little bit, but I just want to we know that, so we're talking about being relevant right now during this situation. And we keep being told that we're coming out of COVID now, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And we're really hoping that the light at the end of the tunnel isn't a train coming back in the other direction. Well, how do we now as brands, what advice can we give to people now? Say, this is what you need to be looking at right now. If we think we're definitely coming out the other side, what do people with brands need to do right now to make sure that they are engaging with their customers?
So can I take that one just to start with?
Okay.
So this is where obviously each industry, each business is different. So, you know, it's if anyone has a specific pain or anything, then feel free to reach out to me or Annelies, you know, later on. But generally speaking, I would say it comes back down to the customer first, right? The tribe first. So if we're about to reopen our store, whatever that, say it's a retail store, or say you're a travel company, or a taxi firm, or anywhere where there's a physical space as part of what you do, I would suggest to you very strongly of asking for a volunteer from your target, you know, audience, from your tribe, and get a few, obviously safely, and start communicating with them and ask them how they feel. But if there's opportunity arises, we've already said that, but where I'm going with this is, if opportunity arises, is walk them through the whole customer journey, right? From when they come into your store. So you know, imagine we're about to open our clothing store again, right? Get the person who's volunteered, obviously incentivize it if you need to, get them to meet you early morning or whatever is suitable. Walk them through and ask them as they go through, like, what will you be thinking right now? And you know, it'll be amazing what insights you will get from those from that kind of walking someone through your customer experience. I think that's what brands should be doing right now, so that they're putting solutions in place, they're putting things that make people feel safer in place, and they're planning for that now. Distancing, shields. I know in a lot of supermarkets that's what they're doing, but there could be more than that. Maybe it's signs on the wall saying we clean this surface every hour on the hour. And the last one was done by Larry, you know, signature. Sorry, I go to Larry a lot. He's my go-to guy. But you know, that is the kind of thing that I think customers are going to be wanting. You know, when I go into your store, are you going to offer me some free gloves or some hand sanitizer? And how obvious is that's something that you're offering? And how do I know that is something that I can experience? You know, maybe you communicate that with us. Look, we know things are opening up soon. We've just installed all these hand sanitizers throughout our stores in the UK. You know, they're the sorts of things that I think brands need to really be taking seriously right now, because I think, this is my view, it's an opinion, so feel free to shoot it down. But my view is that it's not going to go completely back to normal, at least not straight away, right? People feel unsafe. People worry about their grandparents. People have been shielding and, you know, staying in their homes for months. They're not suddenly just going to take off the shackles, at least the majority, I don't think, are, and go running through through stores and compromise all the good work that they've done. They're going to be conscious of it. So we need to think safety first. We need to think, how can we make this as pleasurable an experience as possible for our tribe? And the only way you're really going to know that, you can make assumptions, but the only way you're going to really know that is if you get the right people and you do the research. And it's going to be a hard graft. We're not used to behaving like this. We're not used to deploying stuff like this. But I think you need to do that, and you need to do it with customers, not just for customers.
What about you, Annelies? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, the communication piece, like when I said at the beginning, say anything, like just tell people what you're doing. In terms of a personal brand, you know, communicate your own life, communicate your own stories, like how things have affected you, because people don't always want top tips and this takeaway and that takeaway. They kind of want to hear someone else's experience and understand that that viewpoint is their viewpoint, and that's how they could have reacted in the situation, or how they could make changes in their life. So sometimes it's not always the kind of, you know, sharp edges of stuff. It's like the softer, like, this is my experience, this is my journey. But just the communication piece, like, just say stuff, just talk to people. Like, we are, you know, we might do it through digital platforms, but it still can be really human. And a lot of the way that we communicate, I think, is language, and using the right language to set the tone for what you're saying, and to avoid some of that still shaming activity and stuff that does go on. But yeah, I think just communication, absolutely. your experiences and how you can help other people, but not necessarily giving everything away, but how you can help.
I agree. And I think that we want to talk about vulnerability now. I know that you're hot on vulnerability and showing your vulnerable side, but if we've got these, what's the benefit to companies showing their vulnerable side, and how would they do it?
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I want you to go for it.
You go. You get that. That's your thing.
I attract clients like me, and it's great. And I attract them because they have real lives and real conversations, and we can actually express our needs and wants with each other. And the relationship becomes really, really flexible because we're just really open and honest with each other. I do that by being very much myself and by dropping any jargon, and I don't try to impress people. And I also say no to projects that don't align to me, which also does leave me actually quite vulnerable financially, because I'm just going to say no to stuff that doesn't fit. But brands, bigger companies, can do the same thing. They can communicate honestly, openly, without jargon, and humanize their brand. And what happens with that is that you attract a specific type of person who's also aligned to your values and is vulnerable in the same ways. And I quite often come across clients who have no idea what they're doing, no idea what they're communicating, why, when, how, what. They're just like, shooting in the dark with stuff. And that's fine if you want to do it that way. But actually being a bit more consistent and actually being a bit more honest about who you are and what you are doing, and having a strategy around the way that you communicate is really key. And for me to attract clients that are like me and want to do business like me, I'm just really open and honest about how I am in my life, in my business. And quite often a client who's normally quite stuffy and thinking, I've got to be P's and Q's, I've got to be business professional, we end up having a really open, honest conversation about how business can suck right now. And it's shit right now. I said I wouldn't swear, Matt, but I did. Damn it.
I didn't hear it.
What happens with that is that we create a long-term emotional connection as a business, and or B2B or larger brand to company. And I work with big companies. I work with Brymore, I work with Southampton Airport, I work with Business South. These are big companies, and it's just me. And we have a real actual conversation and a real business connection. And they use me time and time again, and they refer me time and time again because I'm just a normal human. So that's what I'd say from a personal brand point of view.
No, I love that. And yeah, it's just me as well. And I also kind of very much subscribe to being yourself. And if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, But in terms of if I evolve that question into sort of a more, like a bigger business scenario, and this idea about being vulnerable, something that I think that I've noticed is important in these difficult times from a leadership perspective within bigger companies is for CEOs and leaders to be present, right, at these times. And that is definitely, I think, an area where vulnerability is a massive plus point, particularly if you're trying to motivate a workforce. And one of the things, and you can communicate this outside the organization and inside, but one of my clients, for example, we did last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, right? And obviously it's been quite a tough few months. And one of the things that we did was, which was a project that I helped to deploy, and it was a number of webinars, an hour a day for the whole week, which ended up with a pub quiz on the Friday, which was awesome. But they were all about, it was about nothing about work. It was just down tools. It was just, we had like, I don't know, there was various things like lockdown project was one where everybody submitted their lockdown projects by a picture. And then one of the managers rated each one out with the various criteria and gave an award at the end, right? Another one was a scavenger hunt where one of the managers ran this thing where he'd say like, go and find something that cleans. And the first person that came back with something, won the prize. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make there is what was amazing about that was a lot of the leadership got involved in those types of cultural activities. And what that allowed for was this getting to know, vulnerability, communication. And it, the feedback was phenomenal after those sessions. And really, it was just a week of 1 hour little webinars that we put in play to kind of really deliver something special and to say thank you and to show gratitude to each other after the tough times of the last few months. So what I'm trying to say is that was a little bit vulnerable. Those events could have gone awful, right? They could have gone terrible, but the leadership team was keen in that business to make sure that they were showing this human face. They all got involved. Their people got involved with it as well, and it was a massive success. So I would say, if you can't be vulnerable externally, definitely be vulnerable to your people. Show yourself. Show how you're getting through things. Share things on WhatsApp to your groups or on Slack. Do what you need to do to be human, right? Because we're not machines. We're not robots. We're emotional beings, and all that emotional fluffy stuff that Annelies loves to talk about with her hands. The jazz hands, they're fluff hands.
Great question.
Always.
We have a great question, and I think you can answer it one of two ways. You can go either way with this. So let me ask the question first, because the question is, how do you motivate your leadership team to be more human and engaging? Now, I don't know, unless John comes back and tells me this, is he above the leadership team and he can't get them engaged? Or is he perhaps part of the HR team and can't get his leadership team engaged? That's two different problems right there, right?
I've got one simple answer, because I come across this loads. And I use brand as the Trojan horse for alignment, right? Because one of the things that I find is, if you don't have a clear understanding of why you exist and who you exist to serve, and if you want to add another question to that, why you're different, what that means is, and when I say, a clear understanding, brand clarity around that all the leadership team know the answers to those questions and subscribe to them passionately. If you don't have that, then what you're going to have is people running off in all sorts of different directions, right? Trying to do whatever it is they think the brand needs to do at this time. And this is a common problem in business, splintered leadership behavior, as I call it. And the thing that sticks it back together is brand. And the only way you can get all of those leaders to come together and align and become relevant, and think about relevance and think about vulnerability, is to get them, this is my view anyway, in a series of workshops, thinking strategically, fusing together those people that are looking without at sales and marketing with those people that are looking within, such as HR and finance and all those good things. Get them all together and get some energy in the room and get people excited and passionate about why this company exists and what it's trying to do and the difference it's trying to make in the world. And if you don't do that, you're going to find you're all sort of pulling, and there's this tension, and people are trying to vie over each other to kind of, so that their vision of that or of the brand wins through. So that's what I'd say. Get them in the room, get them communicating, swarm in on this question of brand. And that's there's some little buzzwords. We were trying not to use some buzzwords, but you get what I mean, right?
See, I'll just add to that as well with values. Yeah. So you said the difference between like personal branding is small and bigger branding is bigger, but it all starts with values. All starts with values. And I'm one person now, but I grow my business and I hire someone with the same values as me, or who can become a brand advocate, and then the company grows. It's when you have those bad apples in a business who are like, oh yeah, no, I'm on board with your values, I totally believe in the brand, but then they're going off in their different direction and they're not all happy clappy collaborative or whatever the value is. Then that creates real friction, especially if the team underneath, you've got that person in the middle. So the up here are like, oh yeah, we're all on brand, and the down here are like, yeah, and then this person in the middle is just this sticky person. It's difficult.
Yeah, I'm just coming in on that very, very quickly. This comes back down to using brand strategy in a way that is actually true to the way the business functions. I absolutely get completely sick and tired of brands and businesses that I go into where they say one thing and then the reality is something very, very different. That really upsets me. That's why I do what I do. It cripples me. And the reason why I think those distances happen, like you've explained, is because we don't use the principles of branding as tools. And I don't know why this is. We struggle with it. We don't build them into our HR programs. We don't recruit properly against them. We don't promote properly against them. And really, there's ways of doing it, but you've got to shape up around those things, because otherwise you're just saying, hey, these are our values, this is what we do, and then you're not delivering those experiences either internally to your staff or externally to your customers, which is a tragedy.
I say they need to test their values, so they uncover their values, and companies spend billions of pounds doing this, but you have to have the values in front of you, and then you have to live and breathe them. Do you actually do these, or are they ideal values? Are they what you want to be? You're so interested in Steve Jobs that you want your company to be like Apple, but you're nothing like Apple. You're just going to end up futilely frustrated with your business that won't go in the direction you want, because it's not actually aligned with who you are. And
I think
it's challenging. But
I think just building on that, going back to the subject of the webinar about being open and honest and open and trustworthy. These are, if you're going to deliver an experience for a customer, and you've got, well, say we've got our set of values, right? We've got our set of values there. I have this thing called proof, right? I like to say to leadership teams, let's get in a room, and I want you to think about all of your values, and I want you to point to something that proves that your business, that your brand actually delivers against that value. And if you like, you can split it so you've got internal people and external people, as in people focused externally or internally in the business. Give me some ideas. What's the culture program in this business, and how does that ladder into your values? And from a customer perspective, what are we showing customers? Now, that's great. Even a few years ago, that's a really cool exercise to do, and very, very valuable and super helpful, because you can spot any gaps and then you can build new innovations into it. But nowadays, right now, that is an exercise you must deploy in your business, I would suggest, because if you can't go through all of your values and basically explain to a customer how you're showing that value right now in their life and why that's relevant to them, then I would suggest there's work to be done. We've got to roll up our sleeves. We've got to innovate. We've got to understand the customer and try and build something that actually showcases that value to that customer in today's new normal. That's the challenge for everyone.
And feel free to change your value as well. Yeah. If it's not right, it's not sitting, but you're actually doing all X, Y, Z over here, then change the value, and you'll actually find you'll attract more customers and more opportunities from people who are aligned with those values. So you're not going to lose anything. You're just going to choose from a different pool. So I believe values can change. Just adopt and adapt and see what happens.
Well, I'm very, very lucky, because I get to work for a company called Cooper Parry, who have amazing values. And I know it's fantastic because I went to visit them, and then I basically refused to leave until they gave me a job. But we've also got people like, I've seen her name on it. I hope she doesn't mind me name dropping it, but Claire Smith is here, is watching as well, from Moneypenny. One of the things that these two companies have very much in common is, first and foremost, their employee experience comes first and foremost. Their values must be driven through their EX before they look at their CX. So do you think that should be the route? What our employee experience is first, then our customer experience. And if that's true, because I know we're wrapping up soon, if that's true, how should we go about that?
Well, first, I just totally agree with that, because if your employees are brand advocates, they will act as your referrals for you too. And like we've said, 90% of people will buy from someone they feel that they trust. So you've got all these people going out, say you expand your business, and all these people are totally aligned with your brand and your business, and they're then going out and spreading the word, and it just gets wider and wider and wider. So 100%, because that's 100% how personal branding starts too, that it's all about your values and then bringing other people into your values to kind of be this nice mushy stuff. But Matt, what would you say?
Love a bit of mush. So I 100% agree. I think your employee experience affects your customer experience. So brand, and this is why, on my title, I don't quite know always what I am. I'm a consultant, ultimately a business consultant, but I say I'm a brand and culture consultant, because the two things go together. Your brand, in effect, is your culture. It's internal. It's a strategic thing that then outworks itself out to the customer. So you've got to have a clear understanding of what you want to stand for, why you exist, who you exist to serve, what you're trying to achieve, your values, your vision, your purpose. And that has to be something absolutely embedded in every single individual in your business, from the grads entering through to the directors. And everybody needs to be held to account to that, in my view. That's the employee experience. You've got to build that in. You've got to recruit against it. You've got to train against it, promote against it. One-to-ones should contain brand thinking in what you're trying to achieve with people, because if you don't, people are just going to wander off, and there's that kind of direction, that North Star is not going to be there. And that's basically what happens. And that's why that's why a lot of companies I go into are in difficult situations in regards to that, because they've let that go, or they've never had it. So the point is if I would say, if you're growing your business, get that in place now, because it's easier than when you get bigger and bigger and bigger and it's all splintered. Do it early, if you're a startup, for example. But even if you're not, it's never too late to think about these things, to put brand thinking in place. It is the glue that sticks the business together. And I think Claire's absolutely right. EX first before CX. They're both important, but really, you're not going to affect your customers unless you've got people internally absolutely aligned. I'll just give you one example. Heinz, have you heard of Heinz to Home? I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's such a cool thing. When I heard of it, I was like, that is brilliant. So people were struggling to get Heinz baked beans, right, in supermarkets and stuff, because they were selling out. So Heinz, what they decided to do was to create their own product to go straight to consumers, to stay relevant in the consumer's mind, to take out the supermarket, who was really difficult to get slots. And they've created these simple bundles called like Heinz to Home, and you can get different ones. Like if somebody's got a baby, there's a baby one, or if you've got, that to me is absolute ingenuity. They put the tribe first, tribe struggling to get access to our product. They built something simple. I'll just buy one of those packs. I think they're 10, 20 quid or something, and it comes delivered. They did a deal with Hermes, the delivery firm, to get it on. Now, you might be a smaller business thinking, yeah, that's great, Matt. Great for Heinz. They're a massive multi-billion-pound company. But the principles are the same. Find the customer pain, create something of value to the customer. Yeah, okay, Heinz are not a delivery company. So what did they do? They partnered, right? So look around. Maybe there's a taxi firm, a local taxi firm near you that would love to have the opportunity to send some of their drivers delivering, just for the time being, just for a few months. Keep relevant, do a deal with them, get something out to the customer. Customer's a winner, partners are a winner, you're a winner, and the brand stays relevant. So things like that, I think, definitely are worth thinking about. But it would have started with Heinz, with their internal vision of their purpose, why they exist, who they exist to serve, and then they found the pain and looked for a solution to deliver against. So just an example there.
Okay, now Matt, that was great. Now take a breath.
I get excited, Steve.
I know you do. Now listen, we need to start wrapping this up now, because we're getting close to time. So I just want you to both give me 10-15 seconds your takeaway actionable thing that people should do now during COVID to make sure their brand is hot. So Matt, you go first, so we can give Annelies the last word.
Oh, I knew you'd ask a difficult. I would say, so is this just one tip or loads of tips?
One or two, you get in 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. Alignment. You've got to align your leadership team. Get aligned, right? I would then say tribe first. Put your customers first. Go out, talk to your tribe. There's two.
Awesome. Perfect. Annelies, go on.
I would say just to be vulnerable. So letting people in behind the scenes is a great way to build personal connection. People make the mistake that it's weakness, but it's actual real ownership and strength of yourself and your business, and where you're going as a person or a larger company, and to have the strength and conviction to go in the direction, and obviously help to serve people on the way. So I'd just say that. And also, I think consistency is really key as well, just because I want to too. When you're doing it, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what you're doing it, and make sure everybody's on that same discussion about what that is and what that looks like. Boom.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to just drop you off for a second and then try and wrap all this up. I'm not sure how I can do it, but thank you very, very much, guys. And
thanks for having us, Steve.
Chat to you.
All the best.
No worries. Now, those guys are in the background, so they can add in. So first of all, massive apologies for my faux pas at the beginning. This is what I do for a living. Like, can you believe it? I was on mute. Such an idiot. Anyway, keeps me real. Shows my vulnerable side, right? So thank you so much for this. Now, what we have done is we've created a PDF document of like a little toolkit that I will send you all. And then you can go through that. Just make sure you're ticking those boxes off. I know Claire made a comment earlier about lining up everything that she's said. If I was an employee of Moneypenny, what would I want? Is what they ask everybody, and Moneypenny are great for that. So what I want to say is thank you very much for joining me on this. I hope you join us for the next one on the June 10th, where we have the amazing Emma Paxton, who's a graphic narrator for businesses, John Hipkiss, who's a laughter therapist, and Paula Reed, who's a international speaker and adventurer and psychologist, who are going to come and talk about all those people who have been supporting events, who lost all of their money and bookings overnight, how they've adapted and how they've shown resilience. So we're going to be talking about resilience in the eventing world. So hopefully I'll see you back for that. I will send you this to watch back, or the segments that you wanted to share with people. If you get any questions that you forgot, please just drop them into me, you know, and I will make sure I pass them on to Matt and Annelies. So yeah, that's us. You know, I've been your events guy, and I hope that I can fill a gap for you the next time you need some event inspiration. Eventspiration. Oh, I just created a word. Amazing. But if you need anything, please drop me a line, and I will do what I can to share with you. I don't know all the answers, but I know people who might, and I'll be able to share it with them. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.